Well, funny lab tests do show that the powdery white substance found in the White House was cocaine. Uh, they're saying that it was found in an area where tours are allowed, claiming it was a tourist that dropped their cocaine, when more than likely it was some politician that was partying a little too hard.
All right, we do have some breaking news. Lab tests just back on the powdery substance found at the White House over the weekend have come back positive for cocaine. This substance was found. It briefly forced an evacuation there. Preliminary tests said it was cocaine. Now these other lab tests have come back. Now we should note that President Biden was at Camp David as this first unfolded over the weekend. He returned to Washington Tuesday morning. Let's go to the White House. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez is there. This does raise a whole lot of questions about how the substance got there, Priscilla.
It certainly does. And one of the big questions here is how it entered the White House to begin with. Now,
How a politician had it on them and ended up dropping either their bag or powdered cocaine all over the place or something. It was probably in a bag or whatever. But it's a politician. How many people have access to the White House? A lot of the politicians do. I mean, it could also be the cops or their aides or whatever else, but it's more than likely the politician, being that it's cocaine, and that's a rich person's drug.
as you mentioned, a person familiar is now confirming to our Kevin Liptak that the lab tests have shown that it is positive for cocaine. Sources had previously told CNN that field tests in the moment had determined that it was possibly cocaine. We now know that that is the case. Now,
It's funny how our politicians are punishing people for the use of cocaine and harshly punishing black people for the use of crack cocaine, and they're doing it themselves. It's rules for it basically it's do what I say, not what I do. It's illegal for you to do cocaine, but because I'm a rich politician in Congress, I can do all the cocaine I want.
where it was found was in the West Wing, in a common area, not an individual office, and also an area where private group-led tours pass through. We also know that the substance was found near where the guests are asked to leave their cell phones before proceeding into the West Wing. Now, of course, this did prompt that brief evacuation on Sunday evening, and they called in Washington, D.C. Fire Department, which deployed their hazmat suits to try to determine what this was. And now, since Sunday, we are learning that it is indeed cocaine. Now, again, this is part of an ongoing investigation. We're trying to get more from the Secret Service as to, again, how this got into the White House and who brought it in. All of those questions still lingering, but at the very least, those lab tests are now in. John?
Yeah, an investigation being led by the Secret Service, Priscilla, and we should note, I mean, clearly they know everyone who goes into that building. It is a known quantity.
That's right. I come in and out of this building on a regular basis, and you do have to pass, just like you would at the airport, through security. And so the question now is going to be how this came to be, and Secret Service is the one who's going to be fielding those questions.
All right, some new information about that powdery substance found at the White House on Sunday that lab tests have confirmed is cocaine. CNN's Kevin Liptak is at the White House for us on this story. Kevin, is there anything else that we know about who this belonged to or how it got where it was left?
Yeah, those are all questions that the Secret Service is now working very urgently to try and find answers to, of course, poring over video footage, but also visitor logs from Sunday to try and determine who exactly brought cocaine into the White House. And I am learning some new information about where exactly this cocaine was found. It was at an entrance to the West Wing, so of course quite a heavily trafficked area of the building, not just by staff, but also by tours that staff are allowed to bring through the the West Wing on Sundays. So you can imagine there are quite a number of people who this could be, but that area does sort of narrow down who this cocaine could have belonged to. The place that it was found is where guests are asked to leave their cell phones before they proceed into the rest of the building. The other question that I think officials are now trying to find an answer to is when exactly this was brought in. Of course, it was found on Sunday on a routine patrol by Secret Service officers, but they don't know necessarily that it was dropped or left on Sunday. Of course, knowing when that came into the building could help narrow down who brought it in. So, of course, they did do that field testing on that substance on Sunday night. That came back for cocaine. That lab test has also now come back for cocaine. The White House itself has not necessarily weighed in on this quite yet. They are leaving this all to the Secret Service, who are very busy now conducting their investigation into who exactly brought this into the building. Brianna.
Was this locked in one of the boxes for the cell phones? Was this left on a flat surface for anyone to see? What do we know?
Well, officials haven't necessarily said exactly physically where it was found. They do know, or we do know that it is in the entrance to this building. But interestingly, as I said, this can go, people can take tours through this area. Not everyone, it's not open to the public, but it is open on the weekends to guests of staff, and they are asked to leave their cell phones in that area. So you can imagine people sort of fumbling with their things, potentially dropping it. We don't know if that's exactly what happened, but it is sort of a narrow scope of people who would be going through this entrance, particularly on a Sunday when the president wasn't at the White House.